Welcome back to the deep dive. I'm really glad you are here with us today because we are about to open a file that feels, and I don't use this word lightly, monumental.
Yeah, it really is.
We are not just talking about a person today. We are talking about a force of nature.
Absolutely.
We're talking about a figure who didn't just, inhabit history. He grabbed it with both hands and bent it into a completely new shape.
It is a massive topic. I mean, we are looking at a life that bridged two completely different eras.
Right.
You have the Victorian age on one side and the atomic age on the other. And standing right in the middle, just spanning that chasm, is the man we are discussing today.
We are talking about the architect of modern India.
Yes. Jawaharlal Nehru.
And right off the bat, before we even get into the timeline or the sources, I want to stop on that title.
The architect.
Yeah. It's such a specific choice of words, isn't it?
Very specific.
We don't call him the general or the king or even just the founder. We call him the architect.
It is a very deliberate title. If you think about what an architect actually does, a general fights battles, right? A politician wins elections.
Sure.
But an architect looks at a vacant lot, or in this case, a broken, divided landscape.
A completely fractured map.
Exactly. And they imagine a structure that doesn't exist yet. They draw the blueprints, they calculate the load-bearing walls, they design something meant to stand for 100 years, not just for the next news cycle.
That is a perfect way to frame this entire conversation, because our mission today is to unpack those exact blueprints. We have this really fascinating biographical account of his life in front of us, and we are going to use it to trace his journey.
And it is quite a journey.
Oh, it's wild.
Yeah.
We are going to go from a very privileged, almost hermetically sealed childhood in Allahabad all the way to the absolute center of the storm in global politics.
And we are going to look for the patterns in that journey. That is what I'm most interested in, honestly.
Patterns.
Yeah. How did his background, which was incredibly unique, how did that shape the decisions he made when he finally held the reins of power?
Exactly. We want to understand the man who navigated the transition from being a subject of a colony to becoming the prime minister of a republic.
A massive transition.
And we need to talk about the trauma of partition, which is this giant shadow hanging over the entire story.
Right.
And of course, we need to talk about the educational and social foundations he laid down.
Because without those foundations, the building of India wouldn't be standing today. It's that simple.
So let's set the stage. We need to transport ourselves back in time.
Let's do it.
We're going back to the absolute height of the British Empire.
The late 19th century. November 14th, 1889, to be exact.
November 14th, 1889. The location is Allahabad.
Right.
At the time, this was the United Provinces of the British Raj.
Today, we know it as Uttar Pradesh.
Exactly. But in 1889, the British flag is flying high. The empire feels totally invincible. And into this world, a baby boy is born.
But we have to be very clear about the context of this birth.
Yeah, let's clarify that.
Because this wasn't a story of a boy born into poverty who had to scrape and claw his way up from nothing.
Not at all.
This is a story of immense influence right from day one.
Right. Let's talk about the family tree. His father was Motilal Nehru.
A titan in his own right. Motilal Nehru was a prominent politician and a highly successful Indian lawyer.
He was a big deal.
Huge. He was a man who commanded respect everywhere he went. He moved in high circles. He understood the law. He understood power. And he understood money.
And his mother was Swaruprani.
Motilal's second wife, yes.
And Jawaharlal was the first of 3 children. So if you picture this, you have the eldest son of a powerful, wealthy, intellectual family.
The weight of expectation on him must have been just palpable from the moment he took his first breath.
I can't even imagine.
In that cultural context, being the eldest son of a figure like Motilal Nehru means you aren't just a child, you are an heir.
You're the next link in the chain?
Precisely. You were being groomed.
And I want to zoom in on that childhood, specifically his education. Because the source material mentions something that I found really fascinating. And I think it explains a lot about his later personality.
The homeschooling.
Yes. It notes that his primary education took place entirely at home.
With private tutors and governesses?
Let's unpack the psychology of that for a second.
Yeah.
What does it actually mean to be educated at home in that specific era?
It is a double-edged sword, really.
How so?
Well, on one hand, you have the absolute best education money can buy.
Right.
You have highly personalized attention. You are likely reading the classics, learning languages, discussing history and law with adults while other children your age are still learning their alphabet.
It fast-tracks you.
It fosters a very precocious, highly intellectual mind.
But on the other hand,
it is deeply isolating.
Yeah.
It is a bubble. Think about the normal social dynamics of a school.
right, the playground stuff.
Exactly. You deal with bullies. You deal with friendship dramas. You deal with people from entirely different backgrounds than you.
You learn how the real world works.
But when you are educated by British governesses in a massive mansion, you are removed from the gritty reality of the street. You are growing up in a silken cocoon.
The silken cocoon, that's a great way to put it. So do you think that greenhouse effect made him detached?
I think it made him distinct. It gave him an air of being somewhat apart from the crowd.
Like an observer?
Yeah.
Like-
He wasn't of the people in the sense of growing up in the dust with them. He was observing the world from a tower initially.
But then, at age 16, that tower moves.
It does.
It moves thousands of miles to the west.
This is the first major rupture in his life. He leaves the safety of that cocoon in Allahabad and travels to England.
Right. He enrolls at the Harrow School.
Now, we need to pause here because the name Harrow School might just sound like a generic private school to some of our listeners.
Oh, it is not generic.
Not at all. Harrow is an institution. It is one of the most elite boarding schools in the entire world.
It's the training ground for British prime ministers.
Exactly. It is where the sons of the empire learn how to rule the empire.
So just picture this scenario for a second. You have a 16-year-old Indian boy who has been educated at home by tutors, suddenly walking the halls of Harrow.
Surrounded by the sons of the very people who are currently occupying his country.
It is a profound irony.
It really is. He is being educated in the heart of the beast.
Yeah.
He is wearing their uniform, playing their sports, speaking their slang. He is absorbing the DNA of the British upper class.
And it didn't stop at Harrow. The academic pedigree just keeps getting more intense.
Right, he goes further in.
After Harrow, the source tells us he goes to Trinity College, Cambridge, for his graduate degree.
Cambridge. I mean, you literally cannot get more establishment than Cambridge.
And then, almost inevitably, he turns to the law.
Following in his father's very large footsteps.
He enrolls at the Inns of Court School of Law. This is in 1910.
And he wasn't just passing through either.
No. The source specifically notes that he passed the bar exam in just 2 years.
That is incredibly significant. It shows he had a sharp, analytical mind.
He wasn't slacking off.
He wasn't just a rich kid buying a degree. He had the intellectual chops to master the complex British legal system in record time.
So by 1912, let's look at the resume of Jawaharlal Nehru,
Okay.
Harrow, Cambridge,
Yeah.
Inns of Court, barrister.
Culturally, intellectually, legally, he is an Englishman.
He has been entirely molded by the West.
This is the part of the history that I always find so fascinating.
Me too.
The man who is going to become the face of the fight against the British Empire was essentially programmed by the British education system.
It is the great paradox of his life. But, here is the thing. I would argue that this Western education was actually his greatest weapon.
How so?
Well, because he understood them.
Ah,
He didn't just hate the British from a distance. He knew exactly how they thought.
that makes a lot of sense.
He knew their laws, he knew their history, he knew their philosophy. When he later argued for independence, he could quote their own philosophers back to them.
Use their own tools against them.
Exactly. He could use their own legal precedents to dismantle their rule.
He was an insider who turned revolutionary.
That's exactly it. You can't dismiss someone as backward or ignorant when they speak better English than you do and know your own laws better than you do.
They had to respect him.
He commanded their respect, even as he was actively fighting them.
So in 1912, this Harrow-educated barrister returns to the homeland,
He comes back to India.
and he starts practicing at the Allahabad High Court.
He puts on the robes. He enters the family profession.
But I have to ask, and the source doesn't explicitly say, but we have to wonder, did he fit in?
That is the million-dollar question.
Imagine the culture shock.
Oh, it must have been massive.
He has spent his most formative teenage and young adult years in the cool, damn intellectual halls of Cambridge. And now he is back in the heat and dust of Allahabad.
Right.
He is navigating a legal system that is this weird mix of colonial imposition and local reality.
There must have been a deep sense of dislocation, a feeling of being caught between two worlds.
And I think that friction, that feeling of not quite belonging entirely to the West, but also being slightly removed from the traditional East, is what eventually drove him to find a cause.
A cause that could unite those two halves of himself.
Exactly.
And that search for a cause brings us nicely to section 2 of our deep dive.
The personal and the political.
Because he couldn't just stay a comfortable lawyer forever. History clearly had other plans.
History always does.
The year 1916 seems to be the major pivot point here.
1916 is the year everything changes for him.
Let's start with the personal side of things.
Marriage.
Yes. On February 8, 1916, at the age of 26, he marries Kamala Call.
And this isn't just a footnote in his biography. This marriage lays the foundation for a political dynasty that would dominate India for decades.
It really does. Because they have a daughter.
Indira Priyadarshini Nehru.
Who the world would later know as Indira Gandhi.
The future prime minister herself.
It is just wild to think about. You have the future first prime minister of the country and the future first woman prime minister of the country living under the exact same roof.
The conversations at that dinner table must have been intense.
Right. The level of political history concentrated in that one household is staggering.
But 1916 wasn't just about his marriage. It was also about a meeting.
The defining meeting.
Yes. He met Mahatma Gandhi.
The source material describes this beautifully. It says it was a relationship that turned to be one of a lifetime.
A mentor. That is the specific word the source uses. Gandhi became his mentor.
I want to spend a moment on this dynamic because it really feels like the core of the entire story.
It is the engine of the independence movement.
You have Nehru, the Cambridge man, the rationalist, the barrister in the sharp Western suit.
Yeah.
And then you have Gandhi.
The aesthetic. The man of faith. The man in the homespun loincloth who speaks of soul force and village life.
On paper, they should have nothing to talk about. They were from entirely different universes.
But they clicked.
They really did.
And I think they clicked because they were so complementary. Gandhi needed Nehru.
Why did Gandhi need him?
He needed someone young, modern, energetic, someone who could speak the language of the intellectuals and the international community.
A statesman.
Right. And Nehru needed Gandhi.
Desperately.
Nehru had the grand ideas, but Gandhi had the people. Gandhi connected Nehru to the actual soil of India.
He grounded him.
He took this aristocratic lawyer and basically dragged him out of the ivory tower and into the villages. He showed him the real India that he hadn't seen from his silken cocoon.
That shift from lawyer to revolutionary, that it's the Gandhi effect in action.
It is. Under Gandhi's mentorship, Nehru didn't just join the movement, he rose straight to the top of it. He became the General Secretary of the National Congress.
So he permanently traded the courtroom for the political stage.
And he brought something very unique to that stage. The source mentions that Nehru brought an international outlook to the freedom struggle.
Let's analyze that phrase. What does an international outlook actually mean in this specific context?
It means he saw the big picture.
Okay.
Gandhi was very focused on the internal moral struggle of India, the soul of the nation.
Right.
But Nehru looked outward. He saw that India's fight against the British was part of a much larger global struggle against imperialism.
He's connecting the dots.
He was watching the rise of fascism in Europe. He was watching the Soviet Union. He understood geopolitics in a way that many local leaders didn't.
He realized that India couldn't just be free in isolation.
Exactly. He positioned the Indian independence movement on the world map. He made it a global issue.
Which brings us to the late 1920s. This is where Nehru really starts to flex his muscles as a leader in his own right, not just as Gandhi's protégé. Section 3, the road to independence.
The year 1927.
A very pivotal moment. The source notes that Gandhi's plan was actually rejected at a session of Congress. That's rare, isn't it? Gandhi's plan being openly rejected.
It is. It shows the growing assertiveness of the younger generation of leaders. And who takes over the presidency of that session? Nehru.
And then, in 1928, he drops the hammer. He officially demands complete independence.
We need to stop and really unpack those two words. Complete independence.
Why is that such a big deal? Weren't they always fighting for independence?
Not exactly. For a long time, the goal for many of the moderates was dominion status.
Like Canada or Australia.
Right. The idea was we will run our own domestic affairs, we'll have our own parliament, but we will still technically be part of the British Empire.
Right. The King of England would still be the head of state.
Exactly. It was a compromise. Independence light, if you will.
And Nehru looked at that and said, no.
He wanted the whole thing. He wanted complete self-rule. No British flag, no British monarch. Total, absolute sovereignty.
That is a massive escalation.
It is a line in the sand. It marked him as a radical. He was moving the goalposts entirely. He was telling the British, we aren't asking for a seat at your table. We are building our own table.
But when you challenge an empire like that, when you stop asking nicely for autonomy and start demanding total separation, there's a price to be paid.
A very heavy price.
The source talks about the cost of resistance.
It mentions that he manifested limited civil disobedience along with Gandhi.
And the result of that disobedience was prison.
He was jailed.
I want to go back to the image of the boy in Allahabad for a second.
Okay.
The boy with the private tutors. The young man at Harrow. The Cambridge graduate. Now, visualize that exact same man sitting in a British prison cell.
It is a profound transformation. The physical reality of prison, the bad food, the isolation, the heat, the absolute lack of comfort for a man born into his level of extreme luxury. It's a testing fire.
It proves his conviction. You can't call him a champagne socialist or an armchair revolutionary when he's literally sleeping on a stone floor.
Exactly. It gave him unquestionable moral authority. He wasn't just talking the talk, he was walking the walk. He was actively willing to lose his own personal liberty to gain his country's freedom.
And that struggle, that constant back and forth between the podium and the prison cell, it continued for years.
Decades, really.
Until finally the dam broke.
Section 4. Triumph and Trauma.
The year that defines modern Indian history, 1947.
It is the absolute climax of the story. But as the title of this section suggests, it wasn't a simple happy ending.
Let's look at the triumph part first. August 1947.
The British withdrawal.
Yeah.
The moment they had been fighting for since 1916, since 1857 really. The Union Jack finally comes down, the British soldiers march onto the ships and leave.
It must have been euphoric. The source says the country rejoiced.
It was the realization of an impossible dream.
Look.
There is always a but in history.
Simultaneously, the source says, the country suffered the pain of partition.
The British decided that they couldn't leave a united India behind. They partitioned the land into two separate nations, India and Pakistan.
Pakistan was formed on August 14th, 1947.
And India celebrated its independence the very next day, on August 15th, 1947.
And
Nehru becomes the first prime minister of independent India on that day, August 15th.
I want you to try and inhabit his mind on that morning. You are standing on the ramparts. You are raising the flag of a free India. You are the prime minister. You have achieved everything you ever fought for.
But at the exact same moment, the horizon is literally burning.
It's tragic.
Partition wasn't just a line drawn on a map by some bureaucrats in London. It was a humanitarian catastrophe of epic proportions.
Unimaginable scale.
Millions of people were migrating, Muslims moving to the new state of Pakistan, Hindus and Sikhs moving to India.
Yeah, the violence.
There was horrific violence. There were refugee camps filling up by the hour.
So his first day on the job wasn't a victory lap at all. It was extreme crisis management.
It was the ultimate test of leadership. He had to manage the celebration of freedom while simultaneously trying to stop a civil war and figure out how to feed millions of displaced refugees.
It is a dual reality that I think really defines his entire premiership. The high idealism of freedom constantly clashing with the gritty, painful reality of division.
And he didn't just hold the office for a brief transition period. He served until his death in 1964.
That is nearly 17 years.
17 years to shape a nation. And that incredibly long tenure is exactly why we call him the architect.
Let's really dig into that title now. Section 5. Building a modern nation.
Architect of modern India.
We established earlier that an architect designs. So what was his actual design for the country?
The source says he implemented radical changes.
Radical. That's a strong word to use in domestic policy.
It is, but it's accurate. He touched everything. Domestic policy, international relations, economic planning, agriculture, social reform. He was building the state apparatus from the ground up.
But the source highlights one area in particular that I think is the real key to understanding his long-term vision.
Education.
Yes. He established numerous institutions of higher learning.
And crucially, he included free and compulsory primary education for all children in his 5-year plan.
Why education, though? You have a country that is poor, that is hungry, that is recovering from the extreme trauma of partition. Why pour your limited resources into universities and primary schools?
Connect it back to the beginning of our story. Connect it back to the boy at Harrow and the scholar at Cambridge.
He knew the value of the software, not just the hardware.
Precisely. Nehru understood that you can build factories and dams, and he did build those. But if you don't have an educated population, you simply cannot sustain a democracy.
He informed citizens.
He knew that knowledge was power.
He wanted India to be self-sufficient.
And to be self-sufficient in the modern world, you need scientists, you need engineers, you need doctors, you need philosophers.
Right.
He was planting trees that he knew he might never sit under, but he knew the next generation, what the source calls young India, would need the shade.
He was building the intellectual infrastructure of the republic.
It was a massive undertaking to take a population with very low literacy rates and just mandate we are going to make education free and compulsory. It was a radically democratic act.
So he is the architect. He is building the schools. He's planning the economy. But while he is building the interior of the house, he also has to defend the perimeter.
We cannot ignore the reality of the map, which brings us to Section 6. Geopolitics and territory.
And specifically, the Kashmir conflict.
The source calls it a subject of contention.
That feels like a very polite, diplomatic way of saying it was a literal war zone.
It was a war zone. Both India and Pakistan wanted the state.
And it wasn't just a political debate at the UN.
No. The source notes that in 1948, Pakistan attempted to seize it by force.
But they failed.
Now, look at this from Nehru's perspective for a second. This is a man who was Gandhi's favorite disciple.
A man of peace.
A man who preached peace. A man who deeply believed in diplomacy and international law.
And almost immediately upon taking office, he has to become a wartime commander-in-chief.
It shows the deep complexity of governance. Ideals are wonderful when you are writing books in prison, but when there are troops crossing your border, you have to respond with force.
He had to defend the integrity of the new nation.
It wasn't just about policy anymore. It was about raw survival.
And the map continued to change even after 1947.
Right. The source explicitly mentions Goa.
We often forget this part of history. The British left in 47, but they weren't the only colonial power hanging around in India.
The Portuguese were still holding on to Goa.
It's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Years and years after independence, there was still a pocket of European rule right there on the coast.
But during Nehru's time, the Portuguese left. Goa officially became part of India.
So, under his watch, the physical map of India was being actively consolidated. He was stitching the quilt together piece by piece.
He was finalizing the borders. He was turning the abstract concept of India into a concrete, unified reality.
It is a massive legacy to leave behind. A free nation, a consolidated map, a completely new educational system.
Which brings us to Section 7, Legacy and the End.
He was formally recognized for this immense work during his lifetime.
Yes, in 1955, he was bestowed with the Bharat Ratna,
The Jewel of India.
the absolute highest civilian honor the country can give. It was the nation collectively saying, we see what you have built.
And he didn't retire. He continued to work until the very end,
He died in New Delhi on May 27, 1964.
at the age of 74.
A life that started in the Victorian Raj, spanned the entire freedom struggle, navigated the terrifying early days of the Cold War, and ended in a free, modernizing India.
But before we close the file on Jawaharlal Nehru, I want to leave our listeners with his philosophy.
It's important.
The source provides a quote from him that I think is just hauntingly beautiful and incredibly relevant today.
Without peace, all other dreams vanish and are reduced to ashes.
Let's just let that hang in the air for a second. Reduced to ashes.
It is a stark, powerful image.
Why do you think he ended on that specific note? Why peace? Why not progress or freedom or power?
Because he had seen the ashes.
He really had.
He saw the literal ashes of partition. He saw the ashes of 2 world wars. He saw the ongoing conflict in Kashmir. He knew better than almost anyone else alive that civilization is incredibly fragile.
He's saying that you can build the greatest universities, you can write the most perfect constitution, you can have the most brilliant economic plans, but if you have war, if you have violence, it all amounts to absolutely nothing.
It is a warning and a guiding principle. He is telling us that peace is the fundamental prerequisite for all human progress. Without it, the architect's building just burns down.
That is a profound place to land. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what here? Why does the story of a man born in 1889 matter to you and me today?
It matters because it is a masterclass in leadership under pressure. It's a case study in how to blend different worlds together.
He bridged the East and the West.
He bridged the past and the future. He took the ancient wisdom of India, filtered it through a rigorous Western education, tempered it in the fire of Gandhi's movement, and used all of that to build a modern state.
He was a man of law who went to jail, a man of peace who had to manage a war.
He was the architect. And whether you look at India's universities, its vibrant democracy, or its physical map, you are looking directly at his design.
Here's a final provocative thought for you to chew on as you go about your day.
Okay.
We often judge leaders by what they build, the tangible things, the monuments.
Sure.
But Nehru's story asks us to look deeper. How much of a leader's true legacy is defined by what they build versus how they handle the crises they inherit?
He didn't choose partition. He didn't choose the Kashmir conflict, but he had to manage them anyway.
Exactly. Is greatness about the blueprints you draw up? Or is it about how you handle it when those blueprints get set on fire?
That is the real question.
Something to mull over. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us. We'll see you next time.